श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रम् धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणम् वन्दे रम्यजामातरम् मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भाम् नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यम् अच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणम् प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः।
Asmat Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Paramagurubhyo Namaha, Asmat Sarvagurubhyo Namaha. So today we're continuing on with our discussion of Sri Vacana Bhusanam by Pilalokacharya with a commentary by Manavala Mahamunikal. Last time, as you remember, we were discussing up to Sutra 101, and there was a discussion about. There was a discussion about, first of all, about Sama and Dharma, which are two aspects that, two gunas, two qualities, two good qualities that prapanas should cultivate. And from those, so Sama means equanimity and Dharma means sense control. So then after we discussed about that, then we also discussed about different sense gratifications and how the prapana is actually trying to be detached from sense gratification because of controlling the mind, controlling the senses. Even more than people who are performing bhakti yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, who follow the shastras. Everybody follows the shastras. But somebody might even be more restrained. And so we'll see, it's going to be explained here about different types of people. We can see, this is what, so we could just look at the sutra. So starting with sutra, again, 101, the sutra is, for those others, it's appropriate to abstain from that which is prohibited by the scripture. The peculiarity of the prapana lies in abstaining from even that which is prescribed in the scripture. So even there's allowance for certain sense gratification, for eating, sleeping, sex life, different sense gratifications in the scripture in a regulated way, and so naturally, the people who take to karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga, they follow those prescriptions. People, of course, who don't take to those things, they don't follow any rules or regulations. But the people who follow the paths of effort, karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga, they follow the prescriptions of the scriptures. And there are allowances for eating, sleeping, sex life, these things in the scriptures in a regulated scriptural way. But the prapana may even give up those for different reasons. He may even be more austere than that. He may not eat, he may not sleep, like in the case of Nam Alwar, what to speak of having sex. So that was the discussion. And now we come to the next sutra, Sutra 102, which says, this abstaining is to some who become prapana out of ecstasy as a result of the indomitable ebbing bhakti, born because of the beauty of the Lord, and to some who become prapana out of ecstasy as a result of the indomitable ebbing jnana, born of the grace of the Lord, and to some who become prapana out of the ecstasy as a result of the indomitable and ebbing ajnana, born because of the established practice, which are practicing what was adopted by the earlier acharyas. Okay, that's pretty terse. That's very difficult to understand. So what I'm going to do is try to explain that. So he's divided it up into three here. And he's basically talking about, when he talks about those who are in ecstasy, in pure ecstasy, he's talking about the alwars. The alwars, because they have got this ecstasy where they're totally absorbed in the Lord, they don't even think about eating, sleeping, or sex life. They don't even think about any form of sense gratification because they're so totally absorbed. And this would be equivalent to the people who are there, the muktas and the nityasuris in Sri Vaikuntham. They're totally absorbed in the Lord, so there's no even thought of something else like that. So so it's sort of, it's not even indifference. It's just not even recognizing that sense gratification is there. Those who have knowledge, who would be, what are we talking about here? Then the next category is those who are out of ecstasy resulting from knowledge. From knowledge would be, well, let's read the introduction he has here. In the fact expressed in the Sutra 101, is when it's analyzed, the previous sutra, it is understood that first of all, if the prapana eliminates the contact of the senses with the worldly things, along with the intention of seeking the sweetness within it only, he would be away from the personal contact with his own wife, along with the sense of dharma with the activity. Though the situation is as such, and as if the content of the sutra is critically analyzed within it, a question comes up: how is it possible for somebody to be away from the desire for ladies or women, which is the example given of sense gratification, which along with its vasana or proclivity is within us from time immemorial, is emerging out. For the same, the author through the sutra graciously answers. And so he says the phrase, this is to some born of the beauty, means that thus, as it is prescribed in the Shastra, the status of not having the personal contact with one's own wife should be attained because the prapanas, who directly experience the indomitable ecstasy, ebbing ecstasy out of the beauty of the Lord as a result of the supreme devotion, right? So that where was I reading? That example referred to the, that example referred to the, I think he's going to explain further. Okay. Next, the phrase, that refers to the alwars. This is to someone born because of the grace, means that the prapanas who have realized the truth, as such, out of their discriminative knowledge, the state of abstaining would have occurred. It is because the Lord's grace and sympathetic thinking upon the soul, that is, in the direction of karma, in order to enjoy himself alone, the soul takes birth in the ephemeral world and destroys by itself due to the desire towards the material aspects. So to say, he makes the devotee not to have the taste to enjoy the materialistic pleasure. Next, the phrase, it is to someone born because of established practice. So that was the second. And I believe the idea is the second is following the example of rishis. There are some rishis who through knowledge, or maybe even purvacharyas, but rishis, they through their knowledge, they know that sense gratification is not conducive for the service of the Lord. Because why? Because it takes time and it takes concentration to engage in sense gratification, which is time that we take away from serving the Lord. So if somebody's totally engrossed in serving the Lord, he hasn't got time to eat or sleep or have relationships and things. with other people. So next, the phrase, this is someone born of the established practice, means that the prapana, who because of the perfect knowledge enjoined out of the ignorance, understands the established practice of the avatars of the Lord appropriately. Valmiki Ramayana states, quote, nay, as the creator and protector of the universe, he has fixed the bounds of propriety to be observed by the people and has inspired the rishis and others to do so. From this line is understood that the Lord in his avatar, right, Dharma Samstapanataya, each avatar, destroys the miscreants, protects the devotees, but establishes the principles of religion, telling us eating, sleeping, sex life, different forms of sense gratification, how they are to be regulated, right? Lives in his authority, and he made the others to lead their life as himself. The Purva Acharyas, the previous teachers in the lineage, understand the truth directly from the Lord as such strictly follow the same in their own life, right? So people read the scriptures, they read the account of the different avatars that have come, they read how Lord Rama is maybe we don't get all the moral laws when we read Krishna Lila, but we certainly do when we read the Ramayana, right? When maybe if we read Mahabharata, there's some, in the Battle of Kurukshetra, there were some things where some lying and some cheating went on, okay, because it was the end of the last yuga, beginning of Kali Yuga. But in the Ramayana, everything is done according to scripture, and Lord Rama's life and his teachings are all, he teaches by example. So they also wrote the authoritative works, and through which explain the truths as they perceived at the grace as the grace of the Lord. In the series of the religious order, the Prapanas understand the established practices through the works, and out of it they praised to the supreme status of not indulging the personal contact, even with one's own wife, and being so, they led their life as the Lord himself, as their own soul, blood, and flesh. Okay, that's a little difficult to understand. The English in my full version here is a little difficult to understand, but I was reading, that's why I'm also reading this, a couple of other versions of Sri Vacana Bhusanam, so that the one by Alkondavilli Govindachari, is it Alkondavilli Govindachari, or anyway? So I'll just read from that one. It says, sexual union with one's wife falls into two distinct strata, namely the sensual and the spiritual. The former is the carnal enjoyment carried on for the appeasement of one's lust, while the latter is the function of a grihasta, married man, performed as a matter of religious duty for the limited purpose of producing progeny, the propagation of the family. Even this latter function is required to be eschewed by the prapana, assuming that he is not already an addict of the former category. No doubt it's very difficult to wean one away from the sensual pleasures indulged for ages. And in the case in question, the subject has to give up the habit stage by stage. This can be achieved by different means by three types of prapanas. The reference in the case of the Alwars, who were in the exuberance of God, of the love of God, they sought refuge in the Lord. Their absorption in the bewitching charms of the Lord's beauty automatically results in ridding them of the sensual pleasures, of which they just become unaware. In the case of the great preceptors or acharyas, who surround themselves at the feet of the Lord, right, due to their profundity and spiritual knowledge. So that's why he says here, first of all, by the bliss of the alvars, second of all by the jnana, the knowledge of the acharyas, third of all by the ajnana of the rest of us, right? The ignorance of the rest of us. So he says, in the case of the great preceptors, acharyas who surrendered themselves at the feet of the Lord due to the profundity of their spiritual knowledge, it is the Lord's cathartic grace that makes them abhor the obnoxious sensual pleasures and diverts their sole attention unto him, the Lord. The prapanas in the third category, right, which is all the rest of us, right, with their basic insufficiency, right? We have no qualifications. We're completely hopeless and helpless, right? Both in regard to knowledge and capacity. So we don't even realize this. We don't even realize that we have to give up sense gratification, and automatically, of course, we give up sense gratification if we're totally like alvars or acharyas, totally engrossed in the spiritual nature of the Lord and his service. But we don't even realize that we have to do that, and our capacity to do it is very little. Steer clear of the sensual pleasures by scrupulously treading the path set by the righteous elders of yore. So, as we say, Mahajano Yena Gatasa Pantahab, by following the previous acharyas and the great teachers and the great examples, by trying to follow them, we can also come close to this ideal, right? This is an ideal that he's talking about. It's not necessarily something that we see everybody is able to do, which is why I mentioned in the last class that Manavala Mahamuni in his commentary says, who is able to do this? Who is able to do this? It is the fear of going astray and thereby coming to grief. Coming to grief means what? Staying in samsara, taking birth again. That makes them rigidly adhere to the rigorous standards of righteousness set by the elders. Okay, now that was actually the commentary for even up to Sutra 104. So let's continue with the other sutras until we get at least to 105. When we get to 105, I have an audio of our friend Sri Vaisnava, and I can play that. So going back to, we're in 101 for Sutra 103. I hope that's clear to everybody, pretty clear. Let's see. 103. So, yeah. So, okay. So, Sutra 103. As to the mode of this arising, it is as follows. Beauty produces unawareness. Right? So that's talking about the alvars. The alvars were so engrossed in the Lord's beauty that they were unaware of sense gratification. Grace produces aversion. So the previous acharyas, because they have the grace of the Lord and they've engaged and they've surrendered to the Lord and they're engaged in his service, they're averse to sense gratification. Established practice produces fear. So the rest of us, we don't really have the aversion for sense gratification, but by practicing the same, following the footsteps of the previous acharyas, and we're afraid that if we don't practice, that we'll be unable to attain the feet of the Lord so it says those prapanas who are captivated by the beauty of the Lord become indifferent to all other aesthetic attractions. Those who are recipients of the divine grace become disgusted with everything other than the Lord, and those who attempt to condition themselves by following the established practice of the previous acharyas, the rishis, and the gurus and great people, become anxious that they may fall from their practice. So here he says, the actual sutra is 103. If someone asks, what is the mode of this birth? Beauty produces ignorance, grace produces aversion, established practice produces fear. That's the actual sutra. So now we know what it means. In Sutra 102, the one before this, right? the mode of birth of the qualities of sama, equanimity, and dharma, sense control, are discussed. Though as such, the author again raises the question. Here's the question: how these qualities get their birth. How these qualities get their birth. And then the sutra graciously answers. This sutra graciously answers. The phrase beauty produces ignorance means that since the Lord's beauty is the attractive force, it makes the prapana not to think about the worldly pleasure as a matter at all. That is, the beauty of the Lord ignores the worldly pleasure. It makes the worldly pleasure be ignored. Nobody even thinks about it. So in terms of Bhagavad Gita, since the alvars and the perfected people, the muktas and nityas, they're all so engrossed in the service and the beautiful form of the Lord, they don't even think about any form of sense gratification, eating, sleeping, or sex life, or whatever. The phrase grace produces aversion means that the grace of the Lord makes the prapana to think about the beauty of ladies, even to look as a very meager thing, which would be discarded at all. And so the previous acharyas, through their knowledge also, they look at it. There's that famous verse where somebody says, "When I think about Lord Govinda, and if I think about sex life, and my lips curl up and I spit," like that. So they feel disgusted out of knowledge, of understanding in theory that being totally engrossed in the Lord's service would exclude sense gratification, material sense gratification. The phrase established practice produces fear means that though the eagerness to enjoy the beauty of ladies, since the established practices of the predecessors are making the prapana to think that if he is not performing the same, finally a great loss to the soul could be incurred. That established practices make him to shiver out of fear towards the enjoyment of the ladies. So thus explores the truth that the qualities of sama and dharma would be originated as such. Okay, so that is Sutra 103. And Sutra 104 says, this is said with reference to the catching of the respective arduous attachment to these three types. There's these three types of people. The author, through the sutra, graciously places the reason to assert that, as it is already explained, among the three reasons of beauty, grace, and established practice, this is what we're talking about, the particular factor alone stands as the basis for the specific type of prapana among the three categories of them. The sutra that says, that is said, with the reference to catching the respective arduous attachment of these three, means the following factors, which are referred to in the previous sutra, through Sutra 46, and Sutra 46 was, I just want to look back and see what Sutra 46 is. Sutra 46 says, because of ignorance, people like us prapanas, because of superior knowledge, the former acharyas are prapanas, and because of ecstasy and devotion, the alvars are prapanas. So if we remember back to Sutra 46, it was talking about three types of prapanas. And again, we're talking here about those three types of prapanas, right? So who are they? The first one is because of people like us are prapanas out of ignorance. So we're in ignorance, we're covered by ignorance, but we're still hoping to surrender to the Lord and to achieve moksha and eternal service to him, like that. The acharyas, our previous acharyas, they're prapanas out of knowledge. They have knowledge. They actually understand the scriptures and they understand the reason for surrendering to the Lord. And then there's the alvars. There's the great alvars and great people who are totally immersed in the service of the Lord already, or the Nityasuris in Vaikuntha. And those people are prapanas out of ecstasy. Okay, So that's the reference here to Sutra 46 in Sutra 104. So it is understood that among the three reasons stated for the Chaitanya or the soul to become a prapana or refugee at the feet of the Lord, a particular reason alone arduously stands as the basis for the specific type of prapana. In continuation, through Sutra 1, from Sutra 102 up until 104 here, this, quote, this is to some, is understood that among the three reasons stated for the aversion towards the material world or sense gratification, right, a particular reason alone arduously stands for the basis for the specific type of prapana. So the prapana who is in the ecstatic state out of devotion may have the grace of the Lord, which is the cause for the aversion towards the world, and fear, which comes to him due to his thinking upon the established practices of the previous acharyas. So when we look at the example of the previous acharyas, we see some of them led such austere lives, right? Even Vedanta Deshika, who was a grihasta, he left such an austere life. Usually we think grihastas have a more sense gratification, or they have a easier life than the sannyasins or the brahmacharis. But in the case of Vedanta Deshika, he led such an austere life that practically any sannyasi can look at him and think that is a great example of austerity. Though as such, since they have the speciality to look on the beauties of the Lord clearly through their inner eye and spiritually enjoy the same, they arduously getting very firm attachment with it. So to them, except for the beauty of the Lord, they may not know the other things because of the excessive attraction towards the beauty of the Lord, which makes them devotees as such. The prapana, who became as such because of excessive knowledge, this is the second type, first we talk about the alwars, may have the experience out of ignorance about the other worldly things due to the attraction of the beauties of the Lord, which he has seen in the state of his avatars, and fear because of the effects of the memory about the established practices which are practiced by the previous acharyas. Though as such, since they are all great personalities who enjoyed the supreme value of the grace of the Lord very much, they have the aversion towards materialistic aspects or sense gratification due to their excessive arduous grace, the excessive and arduous grace of the Lord showered upon them. That's the previous acharyas. The prapana who became as such due to ignorance may have the spiritual experience due to some specific time by seeing the beauty of the spiritual body of the Lord, specifically the Archavatar deity form in the temple, or in the house, who is in the state of avatar in the ephemeral world, right? Well, if he's very lucky, he's around at the time when Rama or Krishna or some other avatar visits this world. But if he isn't, the deity is there in the temple, right? And also the grace of the Lord to a certain extent, which helps him to receive the sensuous pleasure, right? So even that sensuous pleasure or even the material sense gratification is being provided by the Lord for us. Everything is being provided. Though as such, since they think for all times about the established practices of the early acharyas, right, still, even though we're in ignorance and we're trying to attain that position, and we're always meditating upon how austere the previous acharyas were, they possess the excessive and arduous fear in their heart, and we fear that we will not come up to that standard. And this is also part of our property that we also feel. Like I said, when Sri Vaishnava gets up in the morning, he thinks how he's wasted his life and how he's addicted to sense gratification and how he has to do better. So this is part of this idea that the regular prapana is thinking that he has fear. So thus, it's not all pervading fear, though. You think it's not always to be thought of. Okay, so there are certain religions where they say people are God-fearing people. You know, they fear God, or they're always thinking about fear and damnation and all these things. Sri Vaishnavism isn't like that, but there are times when we should meditate, a little bit about the fact that we wasted our lives and we haven't completely taken to the lotus feet of the Lord and served Him and everything, and that we should do better and we should follow the example of the previous acharyas and the alwars. And we should think like that. We should never think that we've made it. This is the wrong attitude. So it is to be stated that while the Chaitanas are in the arduous state of concentrating upon the beauty, grace, and established practices, which result in aversion, grace, and fear, or sense gratification, right? And among the three causes, only one alone should be stood as the basic one of them to become a prapana. Okay, so each prapana has basically this one thing which causes them to become a prapana. Of course, obviously, the alwars were already devoted to the Lord. The acharyas, through knowledge, become devoted to the Lord. And basically, what he's saying is the rest of us become prapanas because we're afraid. We're afraid of failing and staying in samsara, like that. So that is up until that's the end of sutra number 104.
Ramanuja became very famous by his statement that this material world is the body of God. Yeah? That I always really liked that statement, and of course that's from the Bhagavad Gita. The material world is the body of God, body of Vishnu.
Yeah, it's a doctrine in Vishishtadvaita called Sharira Shariri Bhava.
Right.
Is
wrong? Then what is wrong about material sense gratification? Because basically, you are enjoying the body of God when you do that. When you enjoy material sense gratification, it's the material body of God. So why not enjoy it?
Are you thinking about God? Are you thinking about His service while you're doing that? Are you completely thinking like that?
I'm trying to, yeah. When I enjoy,
okay.
When I enjoy a beautiful sunset or a beautiful love making, I try to remember Vishnu when I enjoy that, and yeah, this is His grace that I can enjoy His beautiful body, beautiful nature, beautiful ocean. There is so much beauty also in this world.
If you're remembering God at every moment, then you've already made it. So
yes,
I'm not against.
I try to remember. I cannot always remember, but I try to remember.
That's the point. We try to remember, but we also fail to a certain extent. If I succeed 99%, that means I fail 1%. So that's what I'm saying. Like every morning, people get up, and Sri Vaishnava is supposed to get up in the daily duties of a Vaishnava. We get up and we regret certain things. But we don't go through the whole day regretting things. And it doesn't mean that we stop all activities. It doesn't mean that we stop. I regret that I overeat. I regret.
Yeah,
does it mean I can immediately stop overeating? There's a worldwide business model of people trying to teach people how to become slim, how to lose weight, right? If everybody could simply say, I just won't eat so much food and I'll just lose weight. If everybody had the mental stamina to do that, right? Then there'd be no business.
But that's addiction. Then that's a psychological problem. People are addicted to eating.
And what did I say in the last class? What is our psychological problem? We all have a psychological problem. What is it?
Well, of course, the deepest psychological problem that is that we forget Krishna. Of course, that's the deepest cause of the psychological problems.
Right.
And,
In
cause
terms
of
of Sri Vaishnavism and property, we
Yeah.
forget that we're the slave of the Lord.
Yeah, but coming back to this,
We're the slave of the Lord, right? So
Yeah.
so that means the slave doesn't initiate anything. We
No.
don't initiate anything.
No.
So
But,
so like the Alwars are totally serving the Lord. Everything that they do was serving the Lord, and they were totally engrossed in that, in the beauty of the Lord.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you're describing that. You're saying in the material world is the body of God. So everything in this material world is God. And if you see that 100%, if you're an Alwar and you see that 100%, yeah, you can do anything.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I agree.
Isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
No, I totally agree with that. But I'm saying, we just talked about 3 different types of prapanas. There's the Alwars.
Yeah.
I'm not an Alwar. There's the great acharyas who, through knowledge and devotion and everything like that, they become averse to material sense gratification. And then there's the prapanas out of fear who try to follow the example of the Alwars and the acharyas. Those people, that's the category I hope to be in. I'm aspiring to be in that 3rd category. I can't aspire to the other 2.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And therefore I don't have 100%. I don't have 100% devotion or 100% realization of this world and everything in this world as being God. Right. And as being the Supreme Lord, and therefore all my actions being perfect. And therefore I am fearful that
But according to the property philosophy, it's also not necessary to be 100% that it's perfect, because we will get the grace when we die.
Agree.
We will get the grace.
I agree. So again, my analogy: the person who's 100%, the person who's 100% in knowledge and in bliss, serving the Lord, that person goes to moksha. The Alwars went to moksha. The acharyas, they also went to moksha. And the prapanas, who are not following, they're not following fully. They're not totally engrossed 100%, maybe 50%, maybe 99% even. They also go, even 1%. Right? They also go to moksha.
Right.
So
is there anything wrong to enjoy the material world, and while you're enjoying, you're chanting Om Namo Narayana, so you're remembering Narayan all the time, and so then this material world becomes Vaikuntha, isn't it? Because it's the body of God.
Right. But what I'm saying is there anything wrong? Is there anything wrong with a slave doing things which he doesn't think he hasn't understood that the master is asking him to do? No, there's nothing wrong with that, and still he'll attain moksha. But still, it's not total 100% absorption in the Lord. So if you're an Alwar, you're 100% absorbed. I'm not saying that there's anything. Look, what you're saying is there any deal breaker? Is what you're talking about. Is there any deal breaker? If I do this, will I go to moksha? No, all prapanas go to moksha. There's nothing that breaks the deal. But you can't say you can't say if you're not a realized person and you still do those things that is the same as when a realized person does those things. If you're 100% engrossed in the beauty of the Lord, or you're a realized person 100%, then it doesn't matter at all. If you're not 100%, then it matters a little, but it doesn't matter enough to keep you from moksha.
Right.
That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
right.
It's like if I say to somebody, okay, I'll give you some very gross examples here like that. There are gay people in this world. There are gay people in this world. Does the Shastra say We can even talk about even not gay people, people who are heterosexual. There are other sins also, like meat eating. There are other sins like intoxication, like that. So if somebody comes to me and says, well, you know, I'm a heroin addict, I can't give up heroin, or I eat meat and I can't give up eating meat, or I have to have illicit sex, or even I have illicit sex, or even I'm a homosexual. If they come to me and they say, can I attain moksha? I'll say, yeah, sure, of course you can attain moksha.
Yeah, wonderful.
Can I
Very
continue doing all these things, taking heroin, eating meat, you know, sleeping with prostitutes, and or overindulging in even illicit sex and or having homosexual relationships? Can I continue doing those things? You can. It's against the scripture. It's not really what God wants. You can continue doing it. It's not a deal breaker. You'll go to moksha as a prapana, but you can't say unless you're completely 100% in realized and everything like that. You can't say that's a good thing.
Mm.
And the prapana, even though the prapana knows that he may make mistakes, and he will still go to moksha, and he knows that, still he has another reason for acting in a good way, and that is to show the example to other people who are not prapanas, to show an example to other people who are not prapanas. I'm not going to preach to people to eat meat or to take heroin or to have illicit sex or to be homosexual. I'm not going to preach that. But if those people come to me and they say, hey, you know, I want to be a prapana, I'll say, that's very nice. And if you go to a Sri Vaisnava Acharya, he will initiate you and he'll never ask you. He won't say to you.
Okay.
He won't say to you. He won't ask you, oh, please say no heroin, no illicit sex, no meat eating. He won't ask you to make those promises.
Okay. Oh,
right?
that's
And he looks at you and he may know. Now, the thing is, I've discussed this with people in Sri Rangam like that. And I've said,
yeah.
I've mentioned these different rules and things to them.
Yeah.
You know, these rules are in the general Shastra. It's not like these rules are not there. You know, there are rules like that. They're not as strict maybe as the ways we've understood them in ISKCON. Okay? Because Grihastha life, sex is allowed in Grihastha life, even for gratification of the senses. It's legal according to the scriptures. What to speak of sex and meat and liquor and things like that are intoxication. These things in Vanashrama Dharma, the people who are not Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, even it's mainly just the Brahmins. The rules in Vanashrama Dharma in the Dharma Sutras and Manusmriti, they all mostly apply to the 99% of the rules apply to people who are Brahmins. People who are not Brahmins, people who are Kshatriyas eat meat, Kshatriyas drink liquor. Like that, King Kulashekara was a Kshatriya. He was a Vaishnava Kshatriya. So you can, there's Vaishnavism and there's Vanashram. Okay, so if you follow the rules of Vanashram, you are dharmic. You are dharmic if you follow the rules of Vanashram. That's what Krishna says. He says, I am sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. What does that mean? That means that there are like maybe, I think if you look in the scriptures, I think it's like 4 days a month when you can't have sex, according to the Shastra. All the other days you can have sex with your wife. It's not forbidden. Nobody's asking you to have sex once a month and only to have children. It's there in the Shastra. That's Shastric listed sex for a grihastha, like that. Even the homosexual sins in the it's understood, okay. In Manusmriti, it talks about the rules and regulations. It talks about punishments for homosexuality, right? Okay, these are very minor punishments. Take a bath with your clothes on, so it's not considered a mahapapa. Now, there are 8 mahapatikas or mahapapas, right? There are like killing a Brahmin, killing a cow, having sex with your guru's wife, right? I forget what they are, but but homosexuality is not one of the major ones. It's a minor one. It's a sin. It's a minor sin. So if somebody comes to me and says to me, homosexuality, is it a sin or not? Yeah, it's a sin. It's there in the Shastra. It says it's a sin, right? It doesn't automatically not become a sin. It doesn't become a great thing automatically, right? Because you say, oh, I'm surrendered to God, so therefore my homosexuality becomes now a great thing. It's not a great thing. No sense gratification doesn't become a great thing, but we can purify it by following the scriptural rules, right? If we can't follow the scriptural rules, we'll still go to moksha if we're surrendered to the Lord. If we become totally 100% engrossed in the beauty of the Lord and the service of the Lord in this lifetime, right, then probably we will give up eating, sleeping, sex, everything we'll give up. All types of sense gratification. Ultimately, as long as we have these bodies, there's a certain amount of sense gratification that goes on. You have to eat to live. You have to breathe. You have to drink. You have to do these things. You don't have to do them in a way which is contrary to the scriptures. But if you do them in a way that's contrary to the scriptures, if you live in a way that's slightly contrary to the scriptures, or even extremely contrary to the scriptures, Vibhishana was a Rakshasa, he was a demon. How much was he living according to the scriptures? So still, if you're surrendered and you do property, you'll go to moksha. That's all. It's not really hard to understand the whole thing. Like I said, I went to acharyas in Sri Rangam. I said, okay, somebody comes to you and they're, basically they said, if we understood that somebody was a meat eater, if they were eating meat, because I said to them, illicit sex, intoxication, would you accept a person like this to give them initiation and for them to become a prapana? And they say, sure. But what about what about if the person was eating meat like that? We prefer if they gave up eating meat and for like 6 months or something, and then they came back, and then we would give them initiation. Some people said to me like that. But I have to say that in Ahobalam we have the Chenchus who are devoted to Lord Narasimha. They say they have this Chenchu Lakshmi. They have the story of this tribal lady who was apparently an avatar of an Apsara who married Lord Narasimha, and they said to Narasimha, you want to marry this tribal lady, but she's a tribal. She eats meat. She's a non-vegetarian. He said, no. He accepted her as his wife. So they say Lord Narasimha is our brother-in-law. So you go to Ahobalam, there's all these Chenchus, and they worship Lord Narasimha as their deity. They're devoted to Lord Narasimha, and they have rights in the temple in the Brahmotsavam to take Charanamrita, to take Tirtha first with the Ahobalam Mat Swami. The Chenchus are on it because they're like Lord Narasimha's family, like that. They're all non-vegetarians. So Garuda is a non-vegetarian. Garuda is a Nityasuri in Vaikuntha, and he worships the feet of Sriman Narayana, but he's non-vegetarian. He eats snakes. So, is vegetarianism, do we insist on vegetarianism? No, we don't insist on vegetarianism. Do we insist on following these other rules and regulations? No, we don't insist on any of these rules and regulations. If you come to us and say, these are great things, these are beautiful things because God's the world, we won't agree with that. We won't agree with that. We won't agree with that. We'll agree with that only if you are 100% engrossed in the service and the beauty of the Lord. If you are 100% realized, yes, then we'll agree with that. But if you are only 99% realized, then 1% you're not realized, then 1% you're thinking that you're enjoying separately from the Lord. If you're 100%, if you're an Alwar, you can do anything. Like these Chenchus, they're totally into Lord Narasimha, but they're eating meat, like that. So I don't criticize them. I won't criticize them. I don't go on a campaign telling the Chenchus to try and stop, that you guys should all stop eating meat. If they wanted to stop eating meat, I'd be happy if they did, but I don't really care that they do like that. Similarly, any other Prapanas, whatever they do, it doesn't matter to me because they're going to go to moksha. I know that Srimad Narayana is going to save them because he's going to save anyone. If he's going to save me, and I'm the lowest, so if he's going to save me, he's going to save everybody. So he's going to save everybody. But if somebody comes to me and says, I feel like this, either I praise them, they're the greatest alwar, they've got 100% realization that the world is the body of God and everything in this world is God, and therefore I'm enjoying, if I enjoy meat or if I enjoy heroin or if I enjoy prostitutes, this is all part of the body of God. If somebody comes to me and says that, then I say, you must either be the greatest devotee, or if you're not the greatest devotee, I can't accept that statement as being fully realized. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
But meat eating, of course, is causing harm to other living entities. So
Okay,
that cannot be pleasing. That cannot be pleasing.
That's a good point.
Yeah?
That's a good point.
So if you don't create any harm, then so. But I totally agree that it's
okay. So this is I completely agree with you, and I want to just say a little bit more about suffering. This is the big thing in Buddhism. They say there is suffering. What the whole quest of Buddhism is to negate suffering, right? So there's suffering, and then there's pleasure. Okay, so pleasure only occurs after you get rid of the suffering. So there has to be. So in this material world, there may be. For instance, somebody I want to eat. Somebody may say to me, "You're eating milk products, but you're buying them from the dairy industry, and the dairy industry is creating suffering for the cows. Unless you buy a Ahimsa milk, you shouldn't drink milk. You should become a vegan." Right? People have said this to me, and there's this idea, and some people in ISKCON become vegans. Basically they're moral vegans. They're ethical vegans. They want to avoid suffering. I totally agree to avoid suffering. So, another thing is for instance, sex creates suffering too. If somebody has illicit sex and they create unwanted progeny, that creates suffering like that. Of course, there are ways to have sex without having progeny. We all know that. Okay. So, but do those ways also create suffering? What about mental suffering of people who are in illicit relationships like that? If there are loving relationships between two people, heterosexual, homosexual, to bring it back to the sexual thing, because I don't really want to just talk about sexual things, but all sense gratification, right? But this is on everybody's mind. Sex is totally on everybody's mind, so they want to talk about it all the time. So to bring it back to that, there is suffering. There can be mental suffering in all sorts of relationships. Even if you have a relationship, husband and wife, and you're very devoted to each other, unless you're like Sita and Rama, even in the relationship between Sita and Rama, there seemed to be some suffering. Of course, there's a supreme person, so there's no suffering really there. But there seemed to be some suffering. Rama suffered when Sita was kidnapped. Sita suffered when she had to go and leave the kingdom and go to the Valmiki. So there was suffering. There was only suffering because of the relationship. So the only relationship where there's no suffering is with the Supreme Person, because that is the natural relationship, right? So if you can see everything in relationship totally 100% to the Supreme Person, then that relationship that you have with anything in this material world is the relationship with the Supreme Person. But if you have any relationship with anything, seeing it as different from the Supreme Person in any way, even 1%, then there will be some suffering because it takes us away from the true understanding of that relationship with the Supreme Person.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I totally agree with it.
Yeah, so we should try to avoid suffering at any cost. So like, for instance, I was talking to one other devotee the other day, And they were saying about how in the United States you have conservative people, specifically Republicans, right? They're anti-abortion like that because abortion is suffering, right? If you kill a fetus, that's suffering, right? They're pro-life. They're pro-life. And I said, they're not pro-life at all. They're pro-birth. They're pro-birth. They're not pro-life. Because those same people, after the baby is born, they want the baby to be born. They want the fetus to be born. But after the fetus is born, they don't want to provide for the school. They don't want to provide for the food. They don't want to provide for the life of that child. They don't want to help that child in any way with welfare or whatever it is. They don't medicine, you know. In America, they don't want to give you. They don't want to. The state doesn't want to provide, you know, socialized medicine. They don't want to provide. They don't want to help people. They don't want to help people. Although the scriptures, even the Christian scriptures, they say the poor you should give, you know, alms to the poor, and you should help the poor, feed the poor, clothe the poor, help them with their medicine or whatever like that. You should do that, okay? But these people don't want that. They're only interested that that person be born. They're pro-birth. They're not pro-life. The whole life, right? Whereas the American Constitution says you have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? So it's not just birth. You don't just have the right to birth like that. So what is there more suffering? Is there more suffering for a person if the person is killed in the womb, or is there more suffering if the person lives a whole lifetime of suffering? What is more suffering? So suffering there isn't just suffering, okay? There's more suffering, less suffering. There's gradation of suffering. So we should try to avoid all suffering. That's true. But in this material world, we can't avoid suffering. There is suffering, and this is standard basic Buddhist axiom that all life is suffering, all existence is suffering. So we have to, the only thing, once there will be suffering, as long as you're in this material body, the body's made of karma, and there's going to be suffering, especially in old age, we realize that. So there's birth, what is it? Birth, old age, disease, and death, right? Janma mrityu jara vyadi, in the Gita it says, these are the sufferings. Nobody can avoid birth. Nobody can avoid old age. Nobody can avoid, well, if you die young, of course, you can avoid old age, but you can't avoid death, right? Disease is hard to avoid. And we all have that original disease that we think that we're independent, we're not the slave of the Lord. So that disease nobody can avoid, right? Even if you take the vaccine and you have so many other diseases, avoid it, right? So you have Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi, you have these four basic problems in life, and they cause suffering. So we want to get rid of the suffering. We have the adhyatmic, adibautic, adidaivic. We have the suffering from other living entities, from the devatas or natural calamities, right? And we have the suffering from our own mind and body. So that's why we say Shanti, Shanti, Shanti in the Upanishadic mantras, right? We want peace from all these things. We want peace. So peace itself, or an absence of suffering, is not positive bliss. Once you have the positive bliss and you attain a higher stage of experience, then you give up naturally the other things which are causing suffering. Ultimately, that means giving up the body and going to Sri Vaikuntha and serving the Lord, like that. But as long as we have this body, the Sri Vaishnava understanding is that there's going to be suffering. There is some materialism, there's some suffering. We don't believe in Jivan Mukta. So when somebody comes to me and says, I'm absolutely 100% understanding that God is this, I mean, theoretically you might understand, and even 99% you might understand, but as long as you're in this material body, there's suffering, and there's that inkling of not full understanding. But all glories to anybody who wants to say they're totally self-realized and they can do it. Then they become like an avaduta. Like if you look in the scriptures, there are people like that, Rishabh Dev, that people who are avadutas, and they just did anything and everything and they weren't criticized because, or like Vyasadev's son, Sukadeva Goswami, when he came out of, he was self-realized. So when he ran past the naked girls taking bath in the river, right? They didn't cover themselves. They didn't think, oh, there's this boy, we should cover ourselves. No, they didn't think like that because they could see he's totally 100% not thinking like that. He's only thinking of the Lord. He's like that. So they didn't cover themselves. So there are people like that. They're very, very rare. Like even people who are prapanas are very rare. People who surrender to God. What we're talking about is the rarest of, because here in the sutra, they're talking about 3 types of prapanas. We are hoping to belong to the lowest class of prapanas, the ones that are fearful of breaking scriptural regulations. The ones that are in knowledge are the great acharyas, and then the ones who, it's not even a question for them following the scriptures because they're so totally immersed in the Lord, the alwas. So those are the 3 different types of people and how they deal with the material world and suffering and everything like that. So it's only really a classification here. Again, Sri Vacana Bhusanam, Pilakacharya, he's not trying to say to people, don't follow the scriptures. He's not trying to say nobody should get married, nobody should have sex life, nobody should eat, nobody should sleep, nobody should drink, nobody should breathe. These are all things that we do for our own, to keep our own mind and body together, but there's sort of gratification of the senses. No, he's not saying that. He's not saying that nobody should do that. He's not even decrying people who are acting against the scriptures. Those people still they can attain moksha. But he's just categorizing the different types of people according to how they become, how they are prapanas, how they're prapanas. That's all. So I think we're getting into the weeds here and everything like that. But it's everybody's pet peeve, I think, about I mean, different people have different things. Some people think, well, I'm not addicted to intoxication, but I take some intoxication, or I eat some meat, or I have some sex life in this way, the homosexual, heterosexual, or some other form of sexual, whatever it is like that. Can it be okay? Can it be okay? People don't go to the acharyas in Sri Vaishnavism and ask them those things. I don't go to Sri Rangam and I don't go and ask the acharyas, look, is it okay to drink wine if you don't drink hard liquor? Or, is it okay if I smoke marijuana, but I don't take heroin? Or there's no point asking acharyas that question. They're not interested in that sort of stuff. What they're interested in is in you surrendering to the Lord. Once you surrender to the Lord, you're going to be saved by the Lord. If you can stop these things before, that's fine. If you can stop this, if you eventually you're going to stop doing all these things anyway, because you're going to die. At the end of this life, you will attain moksha, and these things you'll forget all these things. These things maybe you won't forget them. You'll maybe know that you did them, but they're inconsequential. Yeah. So, people have to live the way they have to live, and I don't think that Sri Vaishnavism is there to tell people that they have to live in a certain way. Again, we have to remember the sutras that came before this, the sutras that said there is no qualification for property, only that you surrender to the Lord. So Vibhishana was a meat-eating Rakshasa. He surrendered to the Lord, and he has gone to Vaikuntha, like that. And other people, we've got so many defects. These are all not disqualifications. These are all not disqualifications.
That's a beautiful view. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
hey,
but at the same time, I'm not going to go out there and I'm not going to preach to everybody that homosexuality is great. Please be homosexual. Or illicit sex is great. Please go and do as much as you want. Do more, like that. Or go out there and say meat eating is fine. Kill the cows, or abortion is great. Go have as many abortions as you want. I'm not going to go out there and tell people these things. Because first of all, people who are not Prapanas are going to hear those things, they're going to commit those sins, and then they're going to suffer karmas and rebirth and samsara by hearing me saying that they're a good thing to do, or following my example. If I've set an example by doing those things, and then other people see them, they think, oh, he's doing it, maybe it's okay. He's a Sri Vaishnava and he's doing it, he's going to go to moksha, so maybe it's okay. I don't want to set a bad example for people. I don't want to, either with words or in deeds. So I'm not going to tell them that it's a good thing. But at the same time, I'm not going to say to people that it's the bottom line. I'm not going to make people vow not to do something when they may do it. Then we get into a situation where you have the people who are Catholics and maybe devotees, this kind of devotees. You get into a situation where you're ridden with guilt because you didn't finish your rounds, or you drank a cup of coffee, or you had illicit sex, or whatever you did, and it's okay to think that I was bad. We were all bad. We've all broken scriptural rules. Who is there? Even the greatest, even the acharyas and things. Even in the life of Ramanuja, we see that there were rules of etiquette, or different things there was suffering involved with other people. And you can criticize anybody. You can pick anybody in this material world, their life, you can find something and you can criticize. Maybe it's a small spot on a white piece of paper, But so you can criticize anybody. There's going to be some fault. So every endeavor is covered by fault. Everybody's endeavor is covered by fault. There's some fault. But why look at the fault? Why not look at the good things that people do? Look at the good and encourage the good, and encourage people the good. Whatever the fault is, overlook it. And that's the way the Lord looks at it with the people who have surrendered to Him. The people who are surrendered to Him, He looks at it. Okay, these people are bad people, but they've done some bad things. But I overlook it because they've got the right mentality. They understand that they're my servant, and they want to serve me. So I'm going to overlook all those things. So if He can overlook it, we can also overlook it. So I overlook it. I have, and the best, nicest Vaishnavas I've met in India, they're very strict with themselves, and they're very liberal with other people, and say, oh, Swami, would you like, a cup of coffee? No, I don't take, sorry. But if you want to take, you please take, or I'll make you a cup, like that. This Dr. Alwar, we're studying with Dr. Alwar. His father doesn't take coffee. Like most many Sri Vaishnavas take coffee, but his father doesn't take coffee, and he, but he says, if you ask Lakshmi Tadachos, his father, Dr. Alwar's father, if you ask him, he'll say, I've been told that I make a very good cup of coffee. So he doesn't drink it himself, but when people come to his house, he knows that guests expect to be given something to drink. They expect to be given coffee. So he doesn't force other people. But on the other hand, you meet some people who have the attitude that in their own lives, they take so many liberal views and do so many things for themselves, but they want other people to be strict, Oh, I want all the women to be, you get devotees like this all the time. So all the women should walk 3 steps behind the men, and they should all be very subservient, they shouldn't be independent, and this, that, and the other. But I'm going to do whatever I like. I'm going to break whatever, rules of Varnashram that I like, and I'm going to live in my way, and I'm going to do my thing. But, I think women, or I think this group shouldn't do this, or that group shouldn't do that. So the best Vaishnavas I've found, they are very strict with themselves, and with other people, they're very liberal, like that. So, so this subject comes up again and again and again, especially with people coming from ISKCON background. They say, well, no, here's the 4 regulative principles. I say, okay, fine. Those things are there in general in the scriptures, right? But it also says, Kalo Sudra Sambhavan. Everybody in Kali Yuga is born a Sudra. So if you're born a Sudra, you can act like a Sudra according to the Shastras. And the Shastras say Sudras, there's no there's no rule saying Sudra shouldn't have illicit sex, drink and gamble, and it's it says in the Manusmriti even, it says that intoxication, sex life, meat eating. It doesn't mention gambling, I don't think, but he says these are the nature of animals. This is the nature of everybody. So these are natural things. So, but so for Sudras and people like that, sure, there's no harm in it like that. But it also says, the next thing that comes in Manusmriti says, but abstention from these things, from abstaining from these things, following the same sort of lifestyle as the higher classes in Varnashram, that brings great benefit. So it's not that a Sudra can't take intoxication. A Sudra can take intoxication. Sudra can eat meat. The Sudra can do those things. But if he's a Sat Sudra, he may be in a low class in society, but he surrenders to the Lord and he becomes a Vaishnava like that, then naturally his activities become a little bit more sattvic. But whether sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic, whatever our activities are, it'll all be finished at the time of death, and people go to moksha. And this is something that the followers of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, these forms of effort, these yogas of effort, right? They do not understand, because you have to have a qualification, and you have to perform the sadhana, and you have to put in a lot of effort, and then you're counting upon the Lord to cooperate and give cooperative grace, and finally bring you to the goal of moksha, right? Whereas in property there you have no qualification. In fact, according to the Tenacharya Sampradaya, the Sri Vaishnava Southern School, that your disqualification is your qualification. The fact that you are so materially bound and disqualified, that's your qualification. And the mental understanding that you are the servant of God, you're the slave of God, that you're the property of God, right? That is going to save you. That is going to save you, and there is no other qualification, and there's no other effort involved or needed. If you want to make effort, if you want to do things like Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana, if you want to do those things, you can do acts of devotion, acts of great work and knowledge, and you can do those acts, but you're not doing them to attain moksha. You've already attained moksha by surrendering to the Lord and by having that mentality that you're the slave of the Lord. You're already there. Don't worry about that, right? What does Krishna say? Ma suchaha, do not fear. Don't fear the sins. Sarva dhammam parityaja. Just abandon all varieties of works of self-effort, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and surrender unto me. Mam ekam, only unto me. Only to Narayana, not to any other gods, not to any other persons, only to Sriman Narayana. Sarvam pritita mamikam sharam bhaja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha yishyami. I will liberate you. Moksha yishyami. In the future, I will liberate you. At the end of this life, sarva papebhyo, from all papas, from all sins. What does that mean? Past sins, present sins, future sins, unknowing sins, knowing sins, purposefully done sins, all sins. Sarva papebhyo. I will liberate you from the reactions to all sins. And to back that up, he says, Ma suchaha, do not fear. Don't fear. Accept this, what I've said, to be the truth. This is what's going to happen. So if you understand what this means, and you actually take it to heart, you have no problems like that. So all these things about, Swami, what happens, I ate a you know, I ate a big pile of rice on Ekadasi. I didn't know it was Ekadasi. I'm so worried. What should I do? How many rounds should I chant to get rid of that? All this sort of stuff is just details. It's all details. You can, there's nothing, you shouldn't feel proud of breaking scriptural rules. You shouldn't feel happy about it. You shouldn't plan to do it again. But if you broke some rule, it'll be forgiven. So that's the attitude like that. Otherwise, the fallback position for those persons doing karma jnana and bhakti yoga to reach moksha is, Arjuna asked the question, what happens to a person who is incomplete in what he's done? What he's done is incomplete. He hasn't finished. He hasn't become perfect. What in that particular path, bhakti yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga. If that person hasn't become perfect, what happens to him? Does he perish like a riven cloud? And Krishna says, no. He takes birth again, and he gets a nice family, rich family, or a family of yogis, of transcendentalists, and he gets automatically attracted to that path again, and he finishes that path, right? That's what happened. That's what Krishna says. That's the fallback position. That's for the people who are doing karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. The Prapana doesn't have to worry about that. Because why? Because by doing Prapati, by surrendering, he has finished. That's the end. That's the finish. That's the end of it. All he has to do is that. The Lord does everything else. The Lord becomes the means. Bhakti yoga is no longer the means. Karma yoga is no longer the means. Jnana yoga is no longer the means. Prapati is the means. So, and which means the Lord himself becomes the means. It's not even the surrender of the person, because what is the surrender of the person? It's just an acknowledgement that I'm a slave of the Lord. Tavasmiti chayachite in Ramcharma Sloka, Rama says, that person who simply says one time, sakrit eva in Sanskrit means one time only. One time only, somebody who says tavasmi, I am yours, I am yours, I am your slave, I am your servant, right? One person who thinks like that once, right? Once, even if he gives up thinking about it, even if he goes to the acharya, he goes to a guru, gets initiated, and one time he thinks, yeah, I am a servant of the Lord, I am the slave of the Lord, and then he goes away and does whatever he likes, does anything he wants, forgets about the acharya, forgets everything, does everything against the scriptures, breaks every rule, commits every sin, causes suffering with, untold suffering. Even if he does that, the Lord is looking down on him, and the Lord is saying, that one time he admitted, he accepted mentally, even if he didn't say it out loud, he accepted to turn towards me. He accepted mentally for one iota of a second. He thought, yes, I am the servant of the Lord, and therefore I take that as an excuse to save him. And again, I will give you the example of the drowning man. Being an ex-scuba instructor, I will tell you, somebody is drowning, and they yell out, help, help, save me, save me, save me. And you go and you try to save them. And sometimes they stop saying, help, save me. They think that they can save themselves, or they're panicking. They're so hysterical, they give up saying, help me. Sometimes, not everybody who's drowning says, help me, help me. They're too worried about drowning. They're too hysterical to say, help me, help me. So you're going and you see the person and you know that they're drowning. Even they don't say they're drowning, even they don't ask for help, but you can see them. But if they once give an inkling that they want help, you take that as an excuse. You jump into action. You go and you try and help them. But until they stop struggling to try to save themselves, you have to stay away. So God's like that. He sees, oh, this person thinks he can do bhakti yoga perfectly. This person thinks that he can do karma, jnana yoga, whatever. They're doing those things. They think they're qualified and they can do those things, and through those things that they can achieve moksha. Okay, fine. I've given those paths for other people. If they want to try and do those things, if they feel they're qualified and they can do those things, let them do those things like that. Only once the person gets to a point where he realizes, I can't do this. I mean, I can't become perfect by doing this. I have no qualification, and because I'm just the servant of the Lord, the slave of the Lord, and I have no abilities actually, except from him. He's giving me all the abilities. He's working through me. So it's not me at all. I have nothing. I'm just a little tiny Jivatman. So when a person really has that akinchana or hopelessness and helplessness understanding like that, then he thinks he might think for an instance that he's of his real position. Then the Lord says, okay, that guy needs saving. And he tries, and he takes that as an excuse, and he will do anything to save that person, and it's the excuse to save him. But as long as people think they can save themselves, I mean, it's the same thing when people are drowning like that. If you help, are you okay? Oh yeah, I'm okay. Even if the person's not okay, if he says he's okay, I'm not going to jump in and try to save him. Okay, he says he's okay. I may look, I may watch, and I may see. Is he really okay? I probably will look and see. Is he really okay? Maybe I will try and help him. If I see that he's not really okay. But if he definitely says to me one time, I need help, I'm going to take that as an excuse to save him and take him to the shore like that. Even if I start saving him and he says, I'm okay now, I'm going to take him all the way to the boat, all the way to the shore, and I'm going to say, okay, you told me in the water that you're okay, but I wanted to get you on land. I wanted to get you on the boat. And I wanted to make sure that you were okay before I let you back in the water. That's the real way to save somebody. Not that, you go up over them and say, no, he says, no, don't bother, You have to sometimes not take people's word for it. They don't understand. They're in more trouble than they think. And that's the problem with us in the material world. We're actually in more trouble than we understand. Once we come to understand how much trouble we're in, then we just surrender to the Lord, and he saves us. So we have to remember that Charma Sloka from Bhagavad Gita, and we have to remember the sloka from Ramayana, Sakrideva Prapanaya, and the third Charma Sloka, which I'll have to mention, of Varaha, Bhagavan in Varaha Purana. He says, those people who are lying, dying, and they've wasted their whole lives perhaps like that, but they thought of God sometime during their life when they were healthy and they were happy and everything. But at the time of death, they're unable to think of God. They're unable to, and Krishna says, if you think about whatever you think about that, you'll attain. And Lord Varaha says, no, if you have thought about me, if you have worshipped me or thought about me or done something during your life, I will remember you. He says, Aham smarami madbhakta. I will remember my devotee, and I will take him, paramam gatim. I will take him to the supreme destination. So even if you forget, even if you do it once, slight, something like that, the rest of your life you forget all about it. You forget all about Vaishnavism, you forget all about property, you forget all about it, the Lord, you forget all about everything, and you do whatever you want. The Lord remembers you at the time of death. He will remember you at the time of death. That is in the Varaha Charma Sloka, and that is something which Ramanuja took to heart, and which you will find, even if you find these other things mentioned in other sampradayas and other sects, you will see that the scripture says, no, whatever you think of the time of death, that you will attain. But in Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, they say, no, doesn't matter what you think of the time of death. Doesn't matter if you die in a holy place. Doesn't matter if you're surrounded by devotees doing kirtan and pictures of Prabhupada and people chanting japa and doing all those things, and you're in Vrindavan and all these things. That doesn't matter. Right? Or you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that, and surely that's good. But what the Lord will save you despite that, despite not having that, despite not doing those things. Let's say you don't do those things. Let's say you drop dead performing some sinful activity, even whatever it is, right? Drop dead in the most inauspicious circumstances. But you're a prapana, you're a surrendered soul to Lord. You'll attain moksha because of the Lord's promise. And part of property is having mahavishwas, supreme faith in that the Lord is the means and He is the goal, and we will attain Him. And that's all we have to have, is that faith. So faith is everything. And if you want to perform works, if you want to do devotional works and things like that, you can. If you want to avoid sinful activity, you can, like that. Faith is everything, works is nothing. According to the Southern School of Sri Vaishnavism, faith, it is by faith alone. That's it. So I'm sorry, we went really late. We went through the next. So I think we'll finish now, because the people who came for this class, they spent the whole class listening to Sri Vaishnava philosophy. But that's fine. We'll pick up next week, Tuesday, and continue on with Sri Vacana Bhusanam, and we have one last audio from the Sri Vaishnava that we've been listening to, so you won't have to listen to me. And then we'll continue on, and unless there's anybody else who has any other questions about this. But it's fine to have questions about this, is fine, and it's only natural that we ask these questions. And I've asked these questions to people in India, and you get different answers from different people, because some people, of course, they don't know the extent to which foreigners sin. Even they don't know about all these strange sins that we've invented in foreign countries. So, because they're living in a society perhaps which is much more orthodox. Although India is also becoming a land of a lot of sinful activity too these days. People do know that. So they're beginning to realize. They're beginning to realize the extent to which you can go astray from the scriptures, and you can go astray from Srimad Narayana. But they don't really know. They don't have this concept, like that. Some of these concepts. So sometimes we have to point it out to them like that, and they think about it. But ultimately, if we analyze it according to the philosophy, then the philosophy of property and the Lord's own words in the Charma Slokas. These Charma Slokas means the final instruction on these issues. What's the final instruction? So again, I'll quote Bhagavad Gita again. Sarva papebhyo moksha yishyami. I will liberate you from the reactions of all sinful actions. All sinful actions means past, present, those future sins which you haven't even thought that you're going to do, but you're going to do, right? Whether you're going to do them accidentally, whether you're going to do them on purpose, whatever they are, all sins. Sarva papebhyo means, sarva means all, right? The Lord says, I will liberate you from the reactions to all sins. Right. So anybody asks you, oh, what about this? What about that? What about that? All sins, past, present, future, accidental, purposefully, right? You do whatever it is like that. So we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to try to create some. I mean, of course, a person who's 100% a devotee of God, it's not a sin for him to do any of these things. But we don't think that we're 100%. We don't think that we're complete devotees. We think that we commit sins every day. We admit that, and we also regret them. In the morning when we wake up, we should regret that we've wasted our life up until now, and we want to do better. We always want to do better, but we don't think about it 24 hours a day. Why? Because we know, we have full faith that the Lord's going to save us from all those things. So then we don't have to worry. Ma suchaha, we don't have to worry, Krishna says. So thank you very much for listening to me go on and on about this. But the questions are important, and anybody who has a question about anything. So if somebody can think up some more sinful activities that I haven't thought of, right, or that nobody's thought of, then we can also discuss those too. But the answer is going to be the same. The answer is going to be the same. Sarva dharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhyo moksha yishyami ma suchaha. The answer is going to be the same. That's the final answer that Krishna gives. He says, this is my final order. So for those persons who surrender to him, no worries. Ma suchaha. Okay, so thank you very much. If there's no other questions or comments, I'll leave it here today. Jai Shri Narayana. Let's go.